Hi, I'm Mitch, and welcome to the Restoration Road, where my guests today are Tony and Kelly Trent. Tony and Kelly are the incredible parents of Tyler Trent, whose life and death impacted our world in a powerful way, a way that only God could do. As they walk us through Tyler's life and the valley of the shadow of death, you will see that God was with them every single step of the way to be Tyler strong. Thank you so much for being with us today.
Oh, thanks for having us.
I was just blown away by your book, The Upset, Life, Death, and the Legacy We Leave in the Middle, because Tyler actually wrote to me, the reader, and then you would write after he would tell his story. And he was such a gifted writer. I assume that's just the way it was? He was that good?
Yeah, he was definitely a gifted writer. It came very naturally to him, and he enjoyed sharing what he thought on paper. Yeah.
He was really good at it. Really good at it. He's the oldest of 3 boys that you have?
Yes, that's correct.
And can you tell me about his life before you ever saw a sign of cancer? What was he like?
Yeah, so Tyler was a gifted young man. He really was. And we don't say that just because, we're his parents. We recognize that the Lord had given him some extraordinary gifts. And he had a phenomenal gift of leadership. Even at a young age, you could just tell that there was something different about him. He would sit around the table all the time with adults to have conversation with adults rather than go be with kids his own age. And
So kind of an old soul kind of
yes,
thing.
he was an old
Absolutely.
soul, absolutely. Yeah. And he had the ability to write as well as to speak, and he was a fairly intelligent young man. He loved sports. He loved playing games, board games, and he liked the outdoors. And we're an outdoor family, so we spent a lot of time being outside and traveling, doing outside things during vacation. But yeah, Kelly,
Yeah,
you
and
know
he
anything to add?
definitely had the gift of leadership from a very young age. It almost used to fascinate me, because to us, he's just our son, but I couldn't understand why all these kids would follow him.
Isn't that
And it was
something?
like, whatever Tyler was doing, or if Tyler's going to be there, we want to go. Or he was just always able to draw a crowd in. He was a really good student, very efficient. As a matter of fact, in high school, we had 2 of his teachers separately at different times say to me personally, I can't wait to see what the Lord does with Tyler because he has big plans, that they just really saw him doing something big in life.
I know you provided a Christian home for him to grow up in. Was there a moment in time where he fully surrendered his life to Christ as Savior and Lord, a moment that you can recall?
Yeah.
Yes. How old was he? Maybe 7?
He was 6.
6.
I don't know if you've heard of the program called Awana.
Oh, of course.
Yes, so it's a church program where they learn Bible verses, and it was one night after that we were putting him to bed, and that night he had just really kind of rehearsed what he had heard and said he wanted to make that decision for himself. And then he was 11 when he asked to be baptized.
Yeah. Wow, that's powerful.
Yep.
I remember, I think I was baptized at 9. But when you grow up in the church, I think you get it. It'd be like
Right.
if you went as an adult 9 years later, it would start clicking for you. And I think it just starts
Yeah.
clicking. And then
Yeah.
I saw my friends, my classmates in school, start to surrender their lives to Christ. And I started investigating, well, what's that mean? And so I
Well,
get
and
that.
he was super involved in youth group and very close to his youth leaders, so I think that had a lot to do with it also. So yeah, youth group was one of his most favorite things would be to go there, and he was on leadership teams there and things like that too. But
So he's active and athletic and busy as all get out. And how old is he when he realizes his arm's kind of sore?
He was 15.
15.
Yeah, he had complained about his shoulder hurting. And so, being parents, your kids complain a lot about things that hurt, and so our neighbor was actually a doctor, and we took him over and said, yeah, he just pulled something in his shoulder, do these exercises, it'll help him out. And he did those and it just wasn't getting better. And basketball season was getting ready to start. And so we just said, hey, we just need to take him to the doctor and get his shoulder checked out.
And was it a Frisbee that he flicked really hard?
Mm-hmm.
Yes, it was a Frisbee. He was playing Frisbee golf. He liked to play Frisbee golf a lot, and he heard something pop in his shoulder, and it was painful to him, but his arm still moved okay, and so he had a really, really high pain tolerance. And so he just kind of moved on.
Yeah, but it was shortly after that
Yeah.
when I think I wrote, I talked about it in the book, when basketball season was getting ready to start and he couldn't shoot. It hurt too bad to shoot with his right arm. And part of why it didn't really hurt as bad as it could, they found out when they went in for surgery, it was the tumor it was broken, but the tumor was actually holding his bones in place. So therefore, he could continue on even though he had pain.
Unbelievable.
Yeah.
And what's the cancer called?
Osteosarcoma.
So it's a bone cancer.
Yes.
And it's supposed to be one of the most painful things that you can have, right?
It is.
Absolutely.
So he must have had a super high pain tolerance. Well, I think you find out before Tyler finds out, and
That's
you're going to
correct.
announce it to Tyler and his brothers, and you decide to go to Psalm 103. Can you take us to that day?
Oh, man. That's a hard day. It was a day, we decided to wait a couple of days because Kelly and I wanted to pray about how we wanted to tell the kids, and looking back on it, they were even at an age where they didn't even know what a cell was, basically, at least our youngest one. And so we found Psalms 103, and in Psalms 103, there's a verse that says that he will heal all of our diseases. And I set the family down. I took them up actually to our bedroom, set them down. I prayed, and then I said, I want to read Psalms 103, and I have something I need to share with you as a family. And we read Psalms 103, and I basically said to Tyler that we found a tumor in his shoulder, and it sounded like it was going to be cancer. And of course, being kids, they just don't know what cancer means. But that's the reason why I selected Psalms 103, is just, it starts off by saying, bless the Lord, all my soul, and all that is within me. And we were just needing the Lord's blessing, and I told the family, no matter what happens, we're going to honor and glorify God through this. Of course, I never dreamt that it would look like this.
He ends up having reverse shoulder surgery, is that right?
Yes.
But does he go through chemotherapy then after the surgery?
Yes, he had about 4 months of chemotherapy prior to surgery because the goal was to shrink it as much as possible and to kill as much of the tumor as they could before going in for surgery. We did find out devastating news when they did go in to scan him one more time before surgery just to make sure. It had grown into his shoulder. It wasn't initially in his shoulder, it was on his humerus bone, and that was it. And they're not 100% sure, because of course our thought process at that time was the chemo wasn't working. But the doctors thought, we found out in July, and we really didn't get to start treatment until about mid-August, and they think in that short time frame it grew into his shoulder.
Oh my.
Because they did see death and things like that, that's kind of why they came to that conclusion. It's very aggressive, it grows very quickly. It usually presents itself pretty quick if you have it.
Tyler's very transparent in the book about the darkness he felt during that first round of chemotherapy and the suicidal thoughts. He must have expressed something to you, Kelly, because you would sleep on the floor in his room to make sure he'd be okay?
Yeah, I got a phone call one night really late from one of his closest friends, and she had told her parents that he had been talking about that. And so they called me. It was like midnight, and her dad called me to tell me. And so it was from that point forward. And he did not want me in his room.
Were
that
you
point.
okay that call was made?
Oh, 100%.
Yeah.
Yes.
I'm thinking through how they must have wrestled with
Oh,
what do
I
we
know.
do.
I know. Yeah. And they knew him very well. So yes, I was very thankful they had called. He had started off really strong, really optimistic. I think he felt incredibly supported and loved by our church community and family, and kind of went into it with wanting to glorify God and do, but there's a thing called chemo brain, and just the effects of the drugs on his body and his thinking. You know, I mean, had turned 16 shortly after, and all of his friends were living life and going on and doing the best they could. I mean, they don't know either how to handle their friend getting cancer. The majority of them didn't know what to do, and he got really down and thought, I think I might rather die than have cancer and continue this.
Yeah.
Well, he told us too that after he went into remission, he said, if I ever get it again, I'm not going to do chemo again. He said, I'll never do it again. I'll take my own life. Because it's that devastating to go through that chemo regimen. And of course, the drugs are, I mean, for lack of term, you know, it's just rat poison to some degree. And so, and then he went also from being an incredible leader at his school. Everybody looked up to him. His teachers would look up to him for leadership. And then he got his identity basically yanked away. And so he was struggling a lot with that.
When I was younger, a friend of mine had cancer, and he was in the pit of the chemotherapy treatments when I called him one day, and he was down. It was like I was not even talking to the same person. And when I hung up, you think about a 16-year-old friend not knowing what to do. I was just devastated. I was shaking. I was crying. I just didn't understand. And and I'm an adult, so. Tyler's got a great sense of humor. He says chemotherapy is like setting off tear gas in your house to fend off a violent intruder while you're still in it. Well, through all those chemotherapy treatments, he does come to remission. And is he about 18 when he's in remission?
No,
17?
he was still 16.
Still 16?
Yes, because he had turned 16 that September, and he went into remission the following April, early May. Yeah.
It was during that first time that we went and shared with him that he had cancer. That day, he was doing a quiet time, and that's where the 1 Thessalonians verse comes from. In that quiet time, he had read the 1 Thessalonians 5, 16, 18. 16 through 18. It says, rejoice always, pray without ceasing, give thanks in all circumstances, for this is the will of God for you in Christ Jesus. And he realized that he didn't do it right the first time. And so he told the Lord if he ever got it again, it would look different. And I believe in my heart that the reason why we're sitting here today is because my son took a Bible verse by God's conviction and lived his life according to that.
Wow.
And otherwise, we just wouldn't be sitting here.
My goodness. How long is he in remission? Is it until he's 18? Maybe that's what I was thinking.
About 18 months.
Yeah.
So yes, he had turned 17, and he was diagnosed again the following April. So really, he would have been 18 that September.
So you're a landscape architect, and so you take your trips in the winter, as God intended, and you go to warm places, and he starts feeling something around his hip.
Well, actually, we're playing on the beach.
Yeah.
Playing spike ball on the beach, and he's running around enjoying life. And as he's reaching for a ball, his foot went out in the sand, and he felt something in his hip. And we just thought he again pulled a muscle. So it wasn't getting better. So we took him to the doctor, and they did X-rays.
He'd gone on the ski trip, and he called. That day, and was in excruciating pain. And I said, we're calling the doctor tomorrow, and we're going to figure this out.
Right. And then so we went and got an X-ray. It didn't reveal anything at all. And hindsight's always 20/20. But I wish we would have said, hey, look, we're demanding an MRI. And so we're just thinking, hey, look, it just is a pulled muscle. Time goes on, it doesn't get better. So literally, we call the doctor and say, we need an MRI. And so when they completed the MRI, they found it in his hip.
Now, he had decided to go to Purdue. There's a really cool story there.
Yes.
And you can kind of see how God's orchestrating a scene of events. And so he goes to Purdue, but he has hip replacement surgery. Is it right before he starts Purdue, right?
Yeah, I
Yes.
believe it was like 11 days
11
before.
days before.
Yeah.
And so he decides he's going to camp out in a tent at Purdue after the surgery to show his support for the football team.
Yes.
Yeah, the first.
And you weren't crazy about that.
I was not crazy about it at all. I mean, he actually got chemo that day.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah, so he came home.
That's really how we found
That's how we
out.
found out. He came home, he got chemo. Well, he went to he drove straight to Riley. He got chemo. He came home, and I say, "Hey, Tyler, what's up?" "Oh, I'm just grabbing some camping gear. I'm going to camp out with my friend Josh." I'm like, "Really?" And I said, "Where are you camping out?" "Oh, we're going to camp out in front of the stadium for the Michigan game."
Student section,
And,
yeah.
and so I'm like, "When are you going to do that?" "Well, I'm going to do that tonight." And I'm like, "Tyler, really? You're going to do that? I mean, you just got chemo. You're going to be sleeping on the hard concrete. You had hip replacement."
It's on crutches.
On crutches. And I think it's a lesson for parents to say, hey, look, we're not always right. And sometimes our kids know better than we do. And I think about what would happen if he hadn't have camped out that night.
Because this was the
This is the beginning of
It
the
was,
story.
yeah.
of Purdue and this amazing story that went viral. He sent out a tweet, I think, that went viral.
Yeah, he sent out a tweet and said, hey, I'm camping out in front of the stadium. And he was a gifted electronic kid. I mean, he knew everything about iPhones and
Well, he worked
computers.
at Best Buy. He became an Apple master at the age of like
Oh my word.
16, yeah.
Oh my word.
Yeah, so he would tweet it out, and the local news got word of it, and they came into the story, and then he's meeting Coach Brom.
Yeah, he
and,
knocks on his door that morning, right?
And I just, I remember him calling me. He said, "Dad, I'm going to be in the paper tomorrow. Get a copy." and it was, the rest is history.
Yeah.
Now he's majoring in sports writing, and he's a statistician, and he's working with the teams, right?
Yeah, so he was doing data analytics. He's doing data analytics along with he wants to get a minor in statistics and a minor in journalism. And then he ended up being the writer for the local Purdue Exponent paper. And he covered the
For the
basketball
basketball
team,
team.
ironically. He was really writing a lot about the basketball team, not the football team. So,
Well, and he traveled to Boston with the team. He traveled to New York with the team.
yeah.
Yeah.
So,
And he writes about, in the book, about how comfortable his relationships were with the teammates. They treated him like a reporter.
yes.
And they'd ask him about his cancer, aside from what he was doing for the work, and they were like a friend to him.
Yeah, the relationships were amazing. I mean, he became friends with all of them, and then that relationship spawned over to Kelly and I, and so we're still really good friends with David Blau, who plays for the Detroit Lions now, and Marcus Bailey was just at the combine, and he's doing bench press in Tyler's honor to raise money for his foundation. So all those guys, he had a really, really close relationship with them, and they became his friends.
It's awesome. Let's talk about kind of how this whole thing starts taking the world by storm. Is he makes a prediction that ends up being accurate, that Purdue would beat Ohio State.
Yes.
Do you remember that?
Well, I remember saying, or Tom Rinaldi was like, "Are you sure, Tyler, this is going to be on national television?" He was like, "Are you sure you want to say that?" Like, he kept questioning Tyler.
But the crazy thing is that he said it at the beginning of the season, the before game day interview.
Yeah.
He said it at the beginning of the season. Dad, Purdue's going to beat Ohio State. I remember him saying it.
And they end up winning 49-20.
Yes.
Tell me about that day. I think he had a Secret Service escort. Was he paralyzed yet at that point?
Yes.
Yeah, he was.
So he gets a Secret Service escort. Did you have a relationship with somebody that was a Secret Service member?
Yeah.
Indirectly.
So indirectly, we had somebody attend our church that is part of the Secret Service, and he said, there's a lot going on during that game because there's a lot of pregame safety issues because national television and just the amount of people that were going to attend to the game. And he said, let's see if we can get you an escort. So originally they wanted to take him in one of the Secret Service vehicles. and it didn't work out. So they actually rode with us and was radioing ahead to the other agents that were on campus. And we like literally just flew right in.
They would back up, let us through. Back up, let us through.
Yeah,
It was
and
right to the door.
Right to the door.
Wow.
It was magical. And then what's really, really neat is they stood on guard for Tyler the entire game.
Oh.
So it was like they were guarding the President of the United States. They stood back, their arms were crossed in front of them, and then when we were on the field, they were protecting him because they thought all those people running on the field would knock him over in his chair. So they guarded him the whole night, and it was special.
My daughter plays volleyball at Liberty University, and she has a teammate whose dad travels and works with Kirk Herbstreit. And so I've heard amazing things about him, and I thought it was cool that he wanted to give the Herbie Award to Tyler, but he was concerned about seeing him because he thought he'd break down on the air, seeing him prior to the game.
Yeah, so Tyler wanted to meet Kirk. He never had a chance to meet him, and he said, I would love to meet Kirk because Tom came up, and so they had conversation, and Kirk said, I'm sorry I can't come meet you, not because of who you are, just because of me, because I'm afraid I can't do the second half of the game.
The heart underneath all those words just speaks volumes to me. The locker room post game is pretty exciting, and did they give Tyler the game ball?
I don't think they gave him that one. They did give him the Nebraska one when they came to visit him after he had announced that he was coming home from school. So that would have been before the Ohio State game. And the captains all came to our house, and they brought him that ball.
That is so cool.
But he got to address the team.
In the locker room,
In the locker
after
room.
Ohio State, after
Yes,
his
yes.
accurate
Well, when
prediction.
we came out on the field just across, like in the end zone, to go to the locker room, I mean, everyone was cheering his name.
Yeah, the whole entire stadium was going,
Or
and
on
Tyler,
that side of the stadium,
Tyler.
yeah.
It was special. I liken it to think about, it's like an Old Testament story where God blinded the enemy. And it felt like, the walls of Jericho had been marched around several times. And not that Ohio State is an enemy by any means, but it just felt like that there was something there that was special in the air and that God was doing. And I think about the story wouldn't be what it is today if Purdue would have not won.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Tyler said he felt love instead of anxiety from cancer that day.
Yeah.
I think it's one of the most powerful things.
Well, and you know what? For a little bit of, it's a short period of time in the big picture from when we left for the game, arrived, we're in the suite, person after person came to the suite to visit him. Anybody who was anybody at Purdue, came to meet him. And I mean, we didn't even hardly get to watch the game, quite honestly, because we were so busy talking to people who were coming to visit him. And then being in the locker room, it was like for a little bit we forgot about cancer.
Yeah, it was special.
It was not on the forefront of any of our minds.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
Tyler gets awarded by Tom Rinaldi the Disney Spirit Award in his last December. And Purdue's quarterback, David Bell, joined him there. Very special day. And then he becomes honorary captain for both teams in Nashville's Music City Bowl for Auburn Purdue. And that was a really, really tough day for you guys because Tyler had struggled health-wise at that point, right?
It was. He didn't even get to see the game.
So you come home, do you come home the next day?
Yeah. No, we
come
came
home
home the
that
day of the game. Yeah, we were
that night.
there.
Somebody provided a jet, I think, right?
Yeah, so Mr. Irsay provided his jet for us to fly there and fly back, and so we wouldn't have gotten there without that. And so that was quite the gift of the Colts organization to allow us to do that.
So you have a precious 3.5, 4 final days with Tyler. What were those days like?
They were hard. He, at that point, was having a really hard time eating anything and getting his medicine down. He wasn't saying a whole lot. He was sleeping a whole lot more. But I would even go as far to say the day he actually passed, I didn't think he was going to. I didn't think that was going to be the day. because he was still somewhat coherent and still communicating what he could, but because it went to his brain, which is part of why it paralyzed almost his entire body, except for his one bad arm, his right arm, but it paralyzed the left side of him, and it had locked his jaws down so he couldn't really open his mouth, so it was really hard to understand him. But yeah, they were very bittersweet days. Yeah.
I want to thank you. I know it's not easy, and I'm sure this is like anything that's this painful and traumatic, you can't really empathize totally unless you've been through it. So with the best that I can, I just want to say thank you. You're doing amazing work through the Tyler Trent Foundation and Tyler Strong, and it's really cool that he's up there on the student gate with T squared, and it says he will be forever our captain, and we always will be Tyler Strong on the student gate at Ross-Ade Stadium. And thank you so much for the parents that you are. I mean, I'm telling you, from somebody on the outside looking in, it has a lot to do with this amazing son, and I'm sure your other two sons are following suit in their own unique ways. But thank you so much.
Well,
Thanks for having
us. It's our pleasure. Thank you.
Tyler said, we are shaped by our experiences, and we are the people that we are because of the things we've been through. God will take anything that's going on in your life, whether you're at the top of the mountain or in the valley, and he will take that to use it for good and to shape you to be like Christ. That's Romans 8:28 and 8:29. And so I would encourage you to surrender whatever thought, whatever feeling, whatever choice, whatever prayer that you have to God through the power of his Holy Spirit in Christ, and allow him to shape you with the heart of Christ and use you to bring his restoration and his kingdom to others. And remember to be Tyler Strong.
Hi, I'm Prophet Cedric Walker. Join Mitch and I on Restoration Road next week.